Okay.
So please tell me first about yourself briefly. What's your name? Where you are now? Uh, mhm.
My name is Daan van Baalen. That's a Dutch name. I'm originally Dutch, and I moved to Norway in 1993.
Mhm.
I'm 78 years old, and I started with Gestalt therapy in 76, I think.
Mhm.
I'm not totally sure, but
Mhm.
right.
And you are now at home, I believe. Yes.
I'm at home, yes. At
Yes.
home. I live together with Gro. We are a couple,
Yeah. And
married.
this again, I like paintings people have on walls. And what is this on your wall in the background?
You can see one, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a sphinx.
Sphinx. Yeah.
A sphinx made by my long dead mother-in-law.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
She was an artist.
Uh-huh. Right.
She was crazy, but also an artist.
Yeah, I guess all artists need to be crazy, no? In that way. Yeah. So tell me, this first question is about you, as a human being, as a person. What are your qualities? What I mean, and values? Yeah.
Um, um, I'm rebellious.
Uh-huh.
I'm stubborn, and I have a long-lasting revolutionary political also past.
Uh-huh.
It sounds maybe strange for people in former Soviet unions, but I've been a communist.
Uh,
Very.
doesn't anymore, of course, but yes, yes, those times in Poland were, I mean, people were different, no? Okay. Uh-huh.
So I've always been, and it started actually because I come from an upper class, middle class Dutch family where my mother is Jewish and she survived the Second World War with my father, who was not Jewish, by denying that she was Jewish.
Mhm.
At the same time, I had a very Jewish upbringing without knowing that. I
Right.
was 50, about 50, when I, for the first time, understood that my mother was Jewish.
Mhm.
She has survived the Second World War by denying that.
Right. Okay.
So it was a kind of strange experience. So
Uh,
my upbringing, because of this history,
mhm.
because I'm born in 1942, so I don't remember the war, but I remember the confusion between my parents.
Uh-huh.
They're traumatized. My father was in the resistance, and my mother was very afraid.
Mhm.
And that confusion took many, many years.
Mhm.
So before I think I was a very confused young man.
Mhm.
I didn't know what to become, but I was rebellious and stubborn.
Mhm.
And I was very good in sports.
And did you, I mean, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 5 brothers, no
Wow.
sisters.
Wow. And they are older, or you are somewhere
I'm
with?
number 4,
Okay.
so there were 6 boys.
6 boys. Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So my mother was not a very female person.
Mhm.
So women have been always a mystery for me. Not so much anymore, but yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And all the boys, your brothers, I mean, they were all rebellious.
Yes. I didn't get your question.
Did all your brothers were as much rebellious as you?
No, 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 no,
No.
no. I was, my oldest brother was an engineer.
Hmm.
Second brother was a veterinarian.
Uh-huh.
Number 3 was a sea captain. And I became a medical doctor. And so coming from, let's say, a confused upper class family, and studied medicine, and by accident, because of family situations, I became a general practitioner in Rotterdam. In Rotterdam is a big harbor, and there was a big harbor district where I was GP, general practitioner. And my clients were always social dropouts, ex-psychiatry, criminals, prostitutes. And I, coming from a, let's say, upper class family, I didn't understand these people at all.
Interesting.
So there was a kind of learning period where I became very political engaged. There I really became political engaged and was not so confused anymore. So it was about 10 years a general practitioner, and then I became starting to use on the university in Rotterdam as a researcher. And that the reason for that was researcher was that after 2 or 3 years, I was totally confused again in learned medicine, but working with people who had no medical problems, with social problems. And then by accident, totally by accident, I found an advertisement about a psychologist who were doing Gestalt approach with medical people. And I didn't know what it was, so I signed for that. And that is, this is interesting. This I want to know more of. Because that makes me understand people I work with.
But I would like to, I will ask you about Gestalt and how did that all developed with you within this Gestalt world? But I am still interested in you and in your values, in your passions. If you could say me more about. As a teenager, as a student, then you started speaking about it, but I would like to hear more if it is.
Well, values developed slowly, of course, but I'm very much against. My value is we should much more be in a society is more equal, where the difference between rich and poor, even in Norway, is too big. That's a value. So human values like people have the right to be who they are, but we don't have to be more powerful or more rich than others. But that's a very clear value. I'm very socialistic, democratic, socialistic values.
But I wonder how did you come, to work, with all those, as you said, social outcasts in a way. How did that happen?
How that happened? Because there was my first wife, that is not Groen, but my first wife was another woman, a Dutch woman. Her father was a GP in Rotterdam. And he became ill. He got a heart infarction, and I was just at the end of my study. And they asked me, could you, in the meantime, take over his practice till he will be recovered? And I was then assistant for neurology. So I said, okay, I'll do that. But he never recovered, and I stayed there 10 years. Totally surprised by this kind of people who lived in such a poor, miserable life that was very, very hard for me to be. So I want to help them, but social problems were so enormously.
Yeah. So this is interesting because you also said about being rebellious, and I wonder how does that relate to you studying medicine. Was it also part of your revolutionary plan, of your socialistic plan?
No.
No.
In my family, everyone has an academic career, except number 3, who was a sea captain.
Mhm.
So I had to find something to live from. And in my family, it was normal that you study. So nobody had studied medicine so far. And my mother had kind of romantic ideas about doctors. So I said, okay, let's study medicine. But it was not kind of idealism, it was just security.
Uh-huh. Okay. Ah, interesting.
It's not something like coal or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that was my question, actually. Yeah. So what about this idealism at that period? Where
That
was it?
started when I met all these terrible people who
Uh-huh.
were suffering like hell. And then in that time, the general practitioner worked alone
Mhm.
with your wife as secretary and another secretary. But I saw already in the beginning, I need to work together with others. So we started in Holland the first cooperation between doctors, social workers, and district nurses.
Ah,
So we had a group of 10 people,
great.
and all these people were, like me, radicals.
Wow. Okay. Ah. So
So we
it's
wanted to cooperate because the problems were so variety of medicine and social difficulties
yeah.
that we needed some more. So then we started, and that group actually was, we had done very clearly in the Vietnam time,
Uh-huh.
the human potential movement, that we could be more than we were.
Uh-huh.
We had more potential than that. That was something in this group.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Wow, so it's amazing because these days it's of course more natural, and yet it's still sometimes general practitioners. It's a sole I don't know profession, but wow, this was really radical at that time. I
Yeah.
imagine. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it was a very stimulating and group. And of course, we had many conflicts with each other too, because we had different political ideas, but also different ideas about where to go. I went more and more to psychiatry and psychology and learned more there. And I also, at the same time, I started to study cardiology
Uh-huh.
because that was also very important. All these people had heart diseases because of all these disasters there. So I think I was the first general practitioner in the Netherlands who carried an ECG machine to check people. So
Okay.
it was long days work in the middle of the night. We had to do our own emergency. So it was hard learning,
Mhm.
but very idealistic also.
Yeah.
And I think it also caused my damage in my first marriage.
Uh-huh.
I radicalized, and my first wife wasn't there.
Mhm.
She was the doctor of a family physician,
Mhm.
upper class, etc. And I become socialist, communist, radical. So we moved from each other, and it led to a divorce.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, I understand. Yeah, interesting. So how many years did you live? I mean, did you work like that?
I
And
worked like that 10 years,
10 years? Mm-hmm.
and I started, let's say, in 76 already with Gestalt.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I was, maybe you never heard, I think, my teacher was a lady, Nell Innetveld,
Uh-huh.
and she saw potentials in me, so I became her favorite pupil
Uh-huh.
because I was me, but also I think I was a doctor.
Uh-huh.
So she stimulated me very much in becoming a Gestalt therapist. And after 2 years in training, I became already a leader in that institute she was part of. So I
Okay.
was already teaching already then.
Uh-huh. Okay. Uh-huh.
So besides my praxis, I studied Gestalt and also used Gestalt therapy with these crazy people.
Ah, Okay, so so it's not that it's stopped, but you came with this Gestalt ideas and philosophy to those people, as you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Mhm.
And that created also a conflict in our team from these other colleagues, because when I became a Gestalt therapist, you shouldn't develop yourself, you should develop other people.
Oh,
So,
uh-huh.
and then after 10 years in that, I was, because I had published a bit about doing psychotherapy in general practice and Gestalt therapy. And then I was invited on the University in Rotterdam to do research in the area of medical disease and psychotherapy.
Uh-huh.
And there was a department of general pathology,
Mhm.
where I didn't do pathology work, but this psychotherapy with cancer patients.
Mhm.
That was our, to develop, do psychotherapy with cancer patients. And we saw then that they not got cured, all of them, but they lived much longer than we had expected.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
So
it was,
so you left this part, this
yeah,
group of
yeah,
people that you worked before for 10
yeah.
years, right? Or mhm.
And there I published also several articles in research and about autonomy and development of diseases. We found out, for example, that women who had breast cancer, and we could divide them in two groups: the group who lived very long, a smaller group, and a group died very early.
Mhm.
And we found out then that the people who lived long always were troublemakers in the hospital and quarreled with the doctors. They all were difficult people. So that seemed to have a good
Yeah,
autonomy, and that seemed to help them
yeah,
to.
yeah, it's okay. And immune system, yeah. But so I understand it this way. Tell me if I am right about that. That somehow this research somehow attracted you more at that time, or you had enough. You were tired with this work, you know. Uh,
Well, I got tired of that work.
yeah, I
After
imagine.
10 years, I really had enough.
Yes.
So, but then I was saved by an invitation from the university.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there I continued working in this Gestalt Institute in Holland.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, so one day, 2 days I worked for the Gestalt Institute, and 4 days I worked for the university.
Okay. Mhm, mhm,
And in that time, I also studied not only Gestalt, but also psychosynthesis
uh-huh,
and also group psychotherapy.
uh-huh.
So I
Okay.
had 3 educations also.
Okay.
In
So
the,
you were very active and
yeah,
multi.
yeah,
Uh, so so how come you met your wife? I mean, Gro.
well, my boss, the professor there, so I was there an assistant professor,
Mm-hmm.
and my boss, the professor, Marco de Vries was his name. He was also a Gestalt therapist,
Hmm.
but he was a very good scientist, but a bad therapist. I was much better than him, but I'm not a good scientist. So one day he said, "Daan, you have to go to Norway because George Brown, maybe you've heard his name,
Uh-huh.
was an American professor in Gestalt therapy and in pedagogy.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And he had summer courses in Norway. So I was sent then to Norway by my boss, and I would like to go. I would like to meet this George Brown,
Mm-hmm.
George and Judith Brown. There's a couple.
Uh-huh.
And there was a workshop in south of Norway, and it was 3-4 days internal
Mm-hmm.
a hotel on the coast, beautiful. And there was this woman. who I met her, and I didn't meet her, but you sit there in big circles and you see each other, and she worked this with, and I was a bit tired and withdrawn because I came by jet lag there. So, but I noticed her. I think it was an interesting woman. And then she, I don't remember the work she did, but she sat on the lap, a man on the lap and the man beside me. She knew already from before. She just experimented with the help of George. And then we were asked to give feedback, and I said, well, I'm jealous she isn't on my lap. So that was the first little thing.
Wow, you were brave.
And then after one day or so in the morning, I get out for a walk, and I met her there, and she asked me, Daan, do you want to go for a walk with me?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, oei, if they say yes, that will have consequences.
How old were you then?
That was in 86. That's how old, 40 about.
40. Lovely.
She was 80, 33, 38, and I was 40.
Okay.
Or 37, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went for a walk, and I kissed her, embraced her, and said, I love you, and said, this has consequences. We were both married,
Mm-hmm.
and so we decided we can't do this. We are really lovers, and we didn't have sex, nothing of all that, but we were very much in love with each other. Mm-hmm. We talked together a lot. I remember in the middle of the night, we sat on a cottage place overlooking the sea, and the sun going down. This midnight sun in Norway is very interesting. A lot of mosquitoes, but beautiful. So we talked and talked and talked and talked. And then at the end of the course, we said together, we say farewell. So I went back to Holland, and she went back to her family in Oslo. And I remember I was sitting on the plane, small plane, and I was just crying.
Yes.
The stewardess who said, oh. So then I went to Holland, and I had for another research conference, I had to go to England for 3 months. So I was in England, and when I came back to my office in Rotterdam, there were letters from Gru. She wanted to see me. So she didn't want to keep the appointment, not to see each other. So then I went to Oslo, and from then we started to be a couple.
What a story. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And so then I lived still in Holland, worked on the university, and I worked till 80. In 86, we started the institute in Oslo, and I moved officially to Oslo in 93. So I still was working on the university, gave training in Oslo and training also in Holland. I flew up and down, and she had her house here in Oslo, and I had my flat in Rotterdam. So up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah. And how was it for you to to move your country and come to Norway? And
it went very gradually. So first I was 1 week a month in Oslo, and then became 2 weeks in Oslo, and at the end, I stopped my work on the university. And I think it was 93. Yeah. And then, so I stopped my work on the university. I was in training in Norway. Did the training together. Gru was my student also.
Yes,
but we were,
yes, mentioned that.
But we were lovers before.
Yes, exactly.
a bit confusing now.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that's an interesting case.
yeah, straight. Yeah, right.
But then I was also still working in Holland
Uh-huh.
and was very much involved in the EAGT
Mhm.
and the EAP, you know what that is? Yeah.
Mhm.
So I became board member in the EAP and board member in the EAGT. And I've been there 8 years or so. At the time, Margarita Spaniel was president.
Mhm.
I was foreign affairs. I think. So I traveled a lot and taught all over Europe,
Yeah.
many
Okay.
countries. So
And if you could say what attracted you from the very first moments with Gestalt, what was it that attracted you the most, drew you to Gestalt?
I can give an example.
Mhm.
I had a new patient, and he came in my office, and he with such a big dossier of psychiatrists. And I said, "Doctor, I need this and this and this pill." I said, "Sorry, I can't give that. I first have to look your dossier if that's correct or not." So there came my stubborn here and now. I can't give you that. So he became very furious on me, banged the doors, scolded me, etc. The next day he came back and said, "You are the first doctor who took me for real."
Uh-huh. Mm.
So these kind of strange things. I remember also a woman who, I don't remember how old she was, but she was 45 or so. And she was being ill. And we had just all laboratory tests, tests, etc. And then I realized that there was no cure for her. She was going to die. There was no treatment, nothing was possible. And then one day she came to my office and said to me, "Well, doctor, what about?" And I got shocked. I didn't say anything. I just laid my hand on her hand, and we sat silent. And he said, "Thank you, doctor." These kind of things I learned in Gestalt.
Yeah, yeah.
Not cause and effect thinking, but relational thinking.
Right, right. Especially given your, medical background, yes. So this difference,
Yeah.
this. Mhm,
So I've been studying a lot. Actually, my whole biography is about the paradigm shift. The shift from being the expert
uh-huh,
and the patient is the object,
uh-huh.
and it is cause and effect thinking, and it is problem solution thinking.
Right. Mhm.
And I had to learn in Gestalt a very hard way to learn relational thinking,
Right.
or postmodern, if you like.
And
that
mhm, go on.
most the things I've published are about that.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
There's an article about me in Norwegian that's called Paradigms, and there's an article in the Gestalt Review about how to work with Gestalt with bipolar disorders,
Mhm,
all these kind of things.
uh-huh, mhm.
So,
And if you were to name what was maybe what is the most challenging for you within Gestalt therapy? Mm,
um, the most challenging thing is actually to meet students
uh-huh,
or clients also, but mostly students who don't understand this paradigm shift. They are not aware in which paradigm they think. They come to Gestalt and place the Gestalt approach in the wrong paradigm.
uh-huh. Mm.
What do I have to do with a patient who is depressed? Things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like it. This is difficult, no? This is difficult to pass this. I mean, to learn, to teach people. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah.
That's the most challenging thing
Uh,
for me.
uh-huh.
To be a therapist, you don't have to explain that, all that.
Yes.
But for people, students who learn that is not easy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It takes 4 years at least.
I guess also because the world outside is still in this old paradigm,
Yeah,
no?
of course. Yes, of course.
So I would say, yeah, I agree. Wow, it is an interesting question, answer to this question. Yeah, this is very important.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with medicine,
Yes. Yeah, sure.
but it's a totally different approach.
Yes.
There was, for example, on medical, still I'm invited in Norway in medical conferences, etc. And there was 5 people sitting on a podium, and I was just listening to what they were saying. And it was about psychotherapy in Oslo. And there was a nurse, I think it was a nurse. He said 90% of the budget for psychotherapy in Norway, in Oslo, goes to only 10% of the worst people. And the rest of the people who suffer got nothing. It's very strange. And then was a professor in general practitioner, and he said, yes, but luckily we know that in antidepressives, in depression, from 3 people, 2 become better. And he rose my finger and said, that's not true. I can give you an overview of this and this and this research that they are not effective at all. I was scared out of the room. I also have created a lot of polarizations. My stubbornness. Yes.
Yeah. It is, yeah, it is, yeah, difficult. Yeah, but I, I wonder how to put it. This is I asked this question. I asked Gra about that too. About what her Gestalt therapy looks like. I mean, what's her way of working with clients, teaching? What's the most important for her? So that would be the same question to you.
I'm very occupied with one of the guys who is not very much mentioned so it's in Gestalt theory, that is Solomon Friedlander. And his idea about polarity work and his idea of the so-called void or the middle position, that I work a lot with. So it's a lot of, especially now with closed down Oslo because of the corona, I start to learn to work with video. They always hated to do that. I said, that's not possible. And now since we have started to do that, I see possibilities there. And then to go from, let's say, the classical chair work with 2 chairs, etc., how to do that on video. That's very challenging. And also to see, if I look to your body, I can only see your face and your shoulders, but I don't see how you sit in the chair, where your feet are, pelvis is, your legs are. So, and there is no eye communication correct, because when I look in the lens, I look at you, you can see you look at me, but I can't see you then.
Yes.
So there are very interesting challenges there. So what I'm very much interested in relational therapy, field thinking, and not individual. So who do I become with you as patient, or you as client, with me as a therapist? That's very, very important for me.
And do you, I mean, because you are speaking about pandemic field, pandemic times,
Yeah.
you relate it to those concepts of Friedlander too,
Yeah.
somehow?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That was stimulated by the conference in Budapest, where the conference wasn't so interesting, actually, I thought. But I got so much to read about him, and very interesting. There's a story about him, maybe you heard that Fritz Perls was an arrogant asshole, actually. Difficult and always making trouble, etc. And at the same time, he also had a very tender side, very polite. And he said, my normal cynical attitude towards people, the only person where it didn't work was with Friedlander. I admired him, he said. And he seemed to have a very big influence on the Perls. So I started to read him, and now I become much more understanding about polarity. If you sit caught in a pole, there must be always another pole, without that you know it. So how to work with that is exciting. And to learn that to students is also very exciting.
Yeah, I've read some an article only, but it's interesting, and I asked myself why it is not so popular. I mean, why he was not so.
It is not popular because he was they called him the Charlie Chaplain of philosophy.
Okay.
And they said that he was producing very serious stuff, a PhD and about Kant, Heidegger, very interesting stuff, but it's all in German. He has never published anything in English. There's only one little book in English, and that's called Creative Indifference.
Yeah.
A small booklet with one chapter about theory and a kind of, let's say, story, a dreaming story. And he was a Jew, and he escaped Germany because of Nazism, and he ended up in Paris and became very poor and ill. So he died already in 46.
Okay, so early. He was
very, yeah. And his publications were mostly in German and not in.
Yes.
So there's only one English little book.
Yeah.
And there's this article you probably see, Flambach.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good article.
Yeah. So yeah. I was interested, and then, as I said, wondered about it, but didn't find time. So I'm glad you're doing something with this. And besides that, you said that you've been sitting, in the boards of different organizations. I wonder why it was important for you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it was important because we had a hope that if we were a European organization, we could get support from the European community to get our profession recognized. And it was based on recognitions in Austria and in England, where they both had EAP and EHT standards where we're recognized. And we thought if we do that, we can spread it all over Europe. But the problem in the EU was that all national states have their own system for healthcare. It's called. So this general European thing that failed. So I have given up that. Very sad to hear that. I, for example, was all very much involved also in the HST with conflicts in Poland. Not with your institute, the Gestalt, but the so-called medical psychiatry, which was controlling psychotherapy. And I have personal fights nearly had with this guy, I've forgotten his name, from a Polish professor.
Yeah, I know.
Terrible. Yeah. And I think they were very corrupt. They will say in the EAP, say things they didn't do in Poland. So that was actually very, I'm not blaming Polish people for that, but it was how the EU was organized that it failed.
Yeah, I understand. And how do you, see that situation nowadays and in the future with, Gestalt therapy? It's
good point.
Yeah.
I see what we have developed so we more or less gave up. I'm still a member of the AGT, etc. And good friends there, I go to conferences. But I'm much more interested now in going to research again, and also in national politics. So, for example, we are in Norway an official college. We have an academical status. So our students get stipends from the government when they have not enough money. They get study points when they finish the education. And we have a kind of registration as Gestalt therapist. So there we work a lot. And it's called back and forth. So there we do. I think that's the way to go. Also in Poland, that you because you have the Bologna agreement in Italy. That's a thing from the EU, and there we have all the same academical regulations in the different European countries. So also in Poland, you should go for this college status.
So it's like you speak of like master in Gestalt therapy, or is it?
No. Oh. You could say you have the systems of bachelor and master.
Yeah.
And actually, we are in postgraduate education.
Right.
All our students must have a master degree or comparable. And then they can study with us and can gain on that 120 study points.
Right.
Which can be put in masters.
Okay.
And further on. So we have also to cooperate with other high schools or universities, colleges or universities. So that's the way to go, I think.
So it's, I understand. So you started locally, but this can, be somehow imitated in other national states of the EU, rather than thinking of some top-down process.
And I think it is very important to do research. For there is a lot of research done, and nobody is actually showing that enough. Gestalt is very effective. We know that from lots of research that from 10 patients, 8 become better. That's much better than antidepressants. Much better. And with the research where I'm involved in is, maybe you've heard about CORE, Clinical Outcome Routine Evaluation. It's in English.
No, I don't. Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah.
And that is published already by Christine Stevens 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And also now recently by Margherita and other Italians.
Yes.
And we do research where we have a way of evaluating Gestalt therapy based on Gestalt theory. So we actually measure the quality of contact.
Uh-huh.
And we do that with a certain schedule,
Right.
with 4 categories. And we compare then the outcome of our system, the Gestalt diagnostic or evaluation system, with scores. So the client score before the session, the therapist scores the Gestalt diagnostic system after the session, and we see if they are correlating.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So we have now correlation, which is very strong. So we have now developed actually an evaluation system for pure Gestalt therapy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that is soon published in Norwegian. And that's important to do, this kind of research.
And I, I feel kind of excitement around it. I mean, your energy here, and it makes me, hopeful because having heard about all these struggles in Poland, how difficult it is. So it seems as step by step, gradually, there are ways of dealing.
Yeah. And we must not forget that we are competing with a very strong lobby. The medicine lobby is enormously.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole society thinks like politics thinks so.
Yeah.
So we are a little rebellious.
Yeah, again.
We have something to offer which is very beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so would you like to add something to what you said, Dan?
Well, I'm an old man now, and I love that I still can work.
Uh-huh.
I think it's important that people like me who come from this split life, medicine and psychotherapy are still showing that, embodying that nearly. So I still teach and see students and not so much clients anymore, but I still also need to see clients to get my fingers on the work. Otherwise, you cannot teach it anymore.
Yeah, right. Yes, this is also somehow important for me to see you and your energy, and that it is possible. I don't. Last year I was 40 in summer, and 2 days ago a friend asked me about my lifeline, where I see whether I already live half life and so on, and 40 is already for me something like a half. But now seeing you and thank you for sharing that you still like and have energy, it makes me
I think it is engagement where you burn for what's exciting for yourself keeps you healthy.
Yeah,
exactly. And old, I have difficult hips and difficult knee. I cannot go skiing anymore as I would love to. I have to sell my sailboat because that was too dangerous when I lost my balance.
Yeah.
So a lot of limitations, but in work and intelligent work and this kind, I still am very stimulated.
Yeah, thank you for this interview, and also for sharing your relationship with Grow, because it's also part, I guess, of this health No, this is at least the way I see it. Mm.
We are not easy people for each other. Not always.
Yeah.
So it is also very interesting to become grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
We have together 11 grandchildren from different origins. And they are from 26 till 6. The youngest are 6 now. And that's also very, very interesting to see how they develop and what we can add to them from our position, which is because we typical. How often do you not in therapy hear there was a grandfather or a grandmother who meant so much?
Exactly.
Some of that we experience too. That's lovely. Yeah, sometimes very irritating also. Not only love affair, but it is very interesting to see that. So I think it's of course sad that to become old. It is. I've never been so close with the polarity of life and death as now. As medical doctor, I thought who dies are patients, not me.
Yeah, sure.
But I have to change that attitude.
Paradigm. Paradigm shift.
Yeah. So it is a kind of interesting also age period where I'm not saying that I don't learn anything anymore. I learn every day. To get older is also a learning process. Not easy always, but it is very important to learn, to continue.
Okay, thank you. That was really a very touching meeting for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all what you shared, and yeah, and it's 5 to 3, so
5 to 3, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. So you know how it continues. I will
and you will send me this tape, and then I have to agree on that or not. And
right. So have a good day, and
thank you.
And be well. Bye bye.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
You may be in Poland soon.
Yeah, or at this conference somewhere.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye.